social climate, welcoming people, the cross-border tourism will flourish more. Cultural, if there is a commonality, if there are similarities, like India and many other countries in the region, they have similarities, and that is why we are talking of cross-border tourism today. Economic factors, the taxation policies, the economic landscape, the ease of business, then the politics, policies, and regulations of the government, how the political systems, whether they are similar or different, even if they are different, how are the political relationship between the countries, the laws and regulations, the complementariness instead of competitiveness, and of course, tourism friendly policies. Similarly, in terms of governance, most important is how easy is the access, how good is the coordination, especially at the borders, how is the ease of travel, how is the ease of business, how is the connectivity and infrastructure between the two countries. These are the governing factors. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there has to be an optimal ecosystem, covering all these aspects which I have just now flagged for a successful cross-border tourism. Now, coming to how India has fared, how this region has fared in the last few years, I would like to give some statistics in order to put my points across. As far as India is concerned, I mean, I would like to mention straight away that India and these SAARC and Southeast Asian countries, they are so much dependent on each other that if you take the India's foreign tourist arrivals annual, almost 40% of the travelers, they come from these neighboring countries. If I were to give figures, I would have given detailed figures, but the fact remains that Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, and some more countries of Southeast Asia, they all constitute almost 39 to 40% of the total, which means almost 4 million out of 10.5 million which India has recorded in the year 2018 has come from these 14 countries. Out of 136 countries which are generally compared, the economies having travel and tourism, you can imagine how much we are dependent on each other and how much India gets. Now, there is hell of a scope. In case if you include West Asia also into it, it will add another 4 to 5%, because all said and done, India is by road connected to the West Asia also, and also with the Central Asia. It's a different matter that geographical terrain is not so good. In terms of mode of travel, if you see, I've picked out some statistics from the India tourism figures, and I have found that almost out of the SAARC countries, 58% of the people, they come by road. Now, this is a very happy situation. And of course, air is about 36%. Now, the reason is because Bangladesh, 68% in the year 2018, people percentage have come from road. Then rail also 14.8%, and air is just about 17%. Now, this is something which is a good happening. It may not happen with all the countries because all of them are not connected. But as Mr. Bunkar has rightly mentioned, the moment the Asian highway comes into operation, that will be a biggest game changer. Now, I would also like to mention that the figure of Nepal tourists coming to India is just about 5.3%. Bhutan to India by road is 8.9%. Now, these figures, they ultimately project as to what should be the future strategies. India and Nepal, India and Bhutan have to work a strategy as to how we can increase the movement by road instead of going by air, because air always has some limitation. Now, the region which we are talking about, we also have to tap the possibility of taking the seaway, the sea cruises. Now, we are all surrounded by oceans and seas. So there is, except for, of course, Nepal and Bhutan and some other places, but then Bangladesh and the entire Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, we're all connected. So there is a lot of scope for India and these regional countries to promote road journeys where road journeys are not happening. Once the infrastructure comes, it will happen, and it should happen, and also the sea route has to be developed more and more. The third figure I would like to show is what is the purpose of tourism. So again, I have picked up some figures from the SAARC countries, and I've realized that leisure and recreation takes about 75% share, business is about 7.5%, and medical is 13%. Now, these figures show one very important conclusion, that medical tourism in India is one very big attraction, and it can further flourish because India is one of the top 10 medical tourism destinations in the world. Similarly, in Southeast Asia, we have business and profession to the extent of 14%, leisure is 69%, and diaspora is 14%. That means the business and profession in Southeast Asia and India, there are a lot of chances for the growth of cross-border tourism. Now, coming to Shraddha's point, that how we improve the cross-border tourism in this region. So I'll come point-wise. First of all, of course, as I had mentioned, health safety. All the countries have to ensure, the travel trade has to ensure, whatever health safety measures have to be taken for their own domestic tourists. More than that, you have to convince the countries. Visa restrictions, whatever happens in terms of new visa policies, how different countries behave in terms of relaxing or giving me visa or making more stringent, that's a different matter. But once there is a movement, then in that case, health safety will be the biggest criteria for building confidence among travelers to travel out of the country and go in. In India, we have opened many places. That confidence is being built by the government, by the people, by the industry. It will take time. For international traveling, it may take some more time, but depends upon. Fortunately, ladies and gentlemen, Asia has been very lucky in the sense that we have not been affected by the COVID-19 threats as much as some of the other parts of the world. And therefore, Asia and this part, the region, stands a very good chance of doing much better in terms of growth compared to other parts in the light of the COVID problem. Other than health safety, the ease of access, how free the movement is. Mr. Bunka talked about European Union free travel zones. The more free travel zones, the better would be the cost. And India and the regional countries, they do need to open up their economies, to open up their borders much more than what it is now. I mean, there is a lot of scope. It will come as and when we have more and more, better relations, free trade movement. Similarly, free movement of people will also start gradually once we have confidence in each other. More than that, the infrastructure has to be in place. Even today, when you have this on the border of India and Nepal, one keeps on getting information and complains that there is lack of coordination between the two countries and people keep stranded there for hours together. Now, this kind of thing, they can be inhibitors for cross-border tourism, especially when it comes to road. So, ease of access, free movement, European Union is one example. I don't want to go into the details. Road travel in the light of COVID also is something which is going to be the first starter in the sense most safe way of traveling in the movement. And fortunately, the border tourism, will you start with the road. So that way, and as I mentioned, Asian highways, once it starts, it will be a big game changer. The third aspect is that the MOUs with countries. I mean, I can cite many such MOUs which have been signed during my period as Secretary Tourism in Government of India. And in one of as an implementation, we even went to Sri Lanka to discuss as a joint working group, and we discussed, and along with the trade partners also, we went there and discussed. Now, this is something which is very important. The MOUs exist between these countries, but what is important is it has to be implemented well, it has to be more effective, and there has to be a regular interaction, not with just the officials. There should be an interaction at the travel trade level of both countries as well. The fourthly, the thing is ease of travel, seamless. As I mentioned, local administration, whether it is by road, whether it is by air, or whether it is by rail, these has to be streamlined and these has to be made very seamless. Fourthly, in terms of how we can see what is important for all the countries is what are the unique products which they can offer to the region, and what are the common features which are common to the entire region. So there are tourists who would like to go to see the unique features. And there are some who would like to see a similar common culture, common heritage, common history that exists in the countries in the region. So there we talk about Buddhist tourism because India, Southeast Asia, Nepal, we're all hub, and Buddhist tourism trail exists in India and Nepal, but it is spread all over Southeast Asia. Ramayana Circuit is another example where India and Sri Lanka have a lot of commonness. Ajmer Sharif Dargah is one such product and one such destination which is very common and very popular amongst certain countries. Cultural tourism, as I said, the history, the heritage, the society, the art and culture, the cuisines, These are also all common things which India and the region countries, they have in common. Spiritual, yoga, wellness, all countries. And of course, the last thing is, which is common, is that we all have a tropical kind of climate. It is not much of a change between India and other regional countries that are in focus today. In terms of uniqueness, if we talk about India, as I mentioned, health tourism, medical tourism is something, wellness is something, yoga is something which is very unique to India. The nature, eco, wildlife tourism is also very a big USP for India. Similarly, golf tourism, which is emerging, adventure tourism, and of course, MICE tourism. These are areas where India can further promote and people can. And let's not forget, as Mr. Bunkar had also mentioned, India, in fact, ranks after China as the biggest outbound tourism country. And it sends almost 25 to 26 million people, 2.5 times more than the inbound. So India is being considered as a source country for many countries. So I would say that the border countries, the region that we are discussing, all the countries should try to take Indian tourists into their places. And obviously, when Indians go there, the reciprocation would also follow, and both of them will have inflow and outflow. Now, the next point is, of course, we need to, in the region, have to make circuits. As I mentioned, one can be Buddhist circuit, and we attract not just people within the region, we attract people from outside the region also. Ramayana circuit. I would also pitch for Ashoka circuit, because Ashoka and his history is so much common among the countries of this region. Then we have World Heritage Sites in India and all this region. Let us all put a sector, a kind of circuit for World Heritage Sites, which are in this part of the world. And then, of course, medical and Ayush and wellness. This can also be a circuit, because I have seen that for Ayurveda and traditional medicines, the entire region has been traditionally having different kinds of medicines, unique treatments, not just India, but other countries as well. So we can also form a hub. Now, when I speak about hub, my last point is that India and these countries, we should not be just act for intra-movement. We should also attract the people from the rest of the world. And there are many areas for which, as I mentioned, the circuits, as I mentioned, certain unique features about the whole region. That is something which I think we have to work on, and we can invite people and attract the people from the world. And like the Aptos call for Visit Asia, I think is one of those promotional campaigns which will help India and the regional countries to attract people from other parts of the world. So in all, Shraddha, I would like to conclude my point by saying that India has always been in favor of promoting cross-border tourism and e-visa liberalization, free movement with neighboring countries, bilateral relations with all the countries, and signing MOUs to improve bilateral cooperation in the tourism sector. Then the policy of Act East from Look East policy is taking us towards ASEAN countries. The SAARC is already there, as you know. SAARC has two platforms: Minister of Tourism platform and Secretary Tourism platform. In fact, I had the opportunity to chair the Secretary Tourism conference of all the SAARC countries. Similarly, there was a meeting of the ministers also of SAARC. So these platforms are available. Similarly, with India and ASEAN, there is an Indo-ASEAN summit which is annually held, and India and ASEAN countries, they interact with each other in a session. I had an occasion to attend this in Manila some years ago. So these are platforms which are available by which we can further improve our bilateral relations as far as tourism is concerned. And in fact, the infrastructure development which will happen in future, the new initiatives like Train to Bangladesh, Kartarpur Corridor, and all these new initiatives which will come between the two countries will further boost cross-border tourism between the countries and among the countries. So friends, my last point is, let us all build the cross-border tourism slowly but steadily, because we have to also care about the health, and we should not compromise with the need for safe and health safety measures because of the COVID pandemic. So these are some of the steps, Shraddha. I thought that I would give a totality of what cross-border tourism means to this part of the world, and how we can make intra-region tourism flourish, and the region by creating this part of the world as a regional hub for